This committee meeting, Tuesday, November 21st. The copy of the open meetings act is located on the entrance wall of the room. And the two agenda items are salary for elected officials and if there are other business. So item one, we'll do salary, our continued conversation about salaries for elected officials.
If everyone would turn their attention to the screen, I can put the array information that we were able to collect. So we've got titles at the top, and then this is continued on to the next slide, and then the corresponding county on the left. We put Douglas at the top, and then down at the very bottom, we're doing a percent to the average compensation for that position. So for example, comparing our Assessor Register of Deeds position to a Register of Deeds only position, we're at 118% of the average salary. So that means we're 18% above that. And of course, we're the only county in this array where we have our Assessor Register of Deeds combined. So I looked at it by combining, pulling both positions so we could see where we're at compared to those other positions. Clerk of the District Court, we're about 15% above what the average is.
Wow. Wow. He must be getting
It must be gross silver.
Just the facts as I have them. Our county attorney is also about 25% over what the average is.
Where's the Polk County attorney at there?
We just weren't able to get that information, so, but I can find out, we just weren't able to get it.
I'm pretty sure that would change the figures a little bit.
Yeah.
I know John Sarcone over there, I think it's, well, anyway, I was just curious how come that's not, because it would make a difference, I think.
Yeah, this was all the information we were able to get. And some of the holes are there, and we're still trying to get that information from them.
Do we have this document?
I can give you a paper copy. Sure. Anybody else? I've got a few paper copies here.
Yeah, can we each have one?
Thank you. There I am.
Are you done with that slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes?
I guess they didn't compare you, Tim.
Huh?
I guess they didn't compare you.
Okay, we've got the rest of the titles on the next page.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, great.
Do you have a question on this first page, Jim?
Sorry?
Do you have a question on the first page?
Yeah, I do. I mean, but it probably goes to the entire document. I see Douglas County, Nebraska is the only in-state comparable that we use. And I don't know if Sarpy and Lancaster have numbers, but they would be in our ballpark, I would think.
Yeah, that's the very last slide that I've got.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
Is it on here?
Yep.
Great.
I was just doing
Ah!
the array first, and then we'll get to Nebraska.
And then, you know, I see that the percentages here relative to the out-of-state things are not reflected in the what do you call it, the in-state deal, which would be helpful. I mean, we can do all the math on our own.
Yeah,
But
and the reason I didn't add those in is because we wouldn't typically use them in an array. Looking at, like for example, union compensation, we wouldn't
Gotcha.
typically use our in-state
Yeah.
rivalry.
Okay.
I guess I shouldn't say rivalries. That's not correct.
Thank you.
Our neighbors.
Our neighbors, exactly. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
Well, let's just try to get
Okay,
through
that's
the
fine.
presentation first.
County commissioners, we are paying about 56% of the market, so quite a bit underpaid. Now, having said that, Oklahoma counties, Polk, Ramsey, Sedgwick, those are all considered full-time positions, and ours is considered a part-time position along with Johnson County. So we're still a little behind Johnson County. Davidson, Tennessee has got a completely different structure as far as their board. It's a city-county combined government there. The engineer's office is just a little bit over what the average is. 2.8% over. Public defender, about 23% over the array there. Not every county has got a public defender. Some of those are state offices, a little bit different structure. Sheriff, we're paying a little underpaid there, 98.1% to market, so almost 3% under, 2% under, excuse me. And finally, the treasurer is about 18% over the rest of the array. Now, if we go to our friends in Nebraska, Lancaster, of course, has a similar structure to ours, and so we're paying comparable to Lancaster, just a few thousand less there. But overall, our numbers are pretty similar. Their clerk of the district court does make more, but our county attorney does make more, as well as the clerk. The commissioners are pretty close, and engineer's a little higher on our side.
Okay.
Jim?
On the county commissioner one, I think when we did that a couple of years ago, a year or so ago, there were 2 counties in Douglas County that were up, and they weren't like the big municipal counties. Did you do all of the counties in Nebraska?
No, we did not do all of them. We just did Lancaster, Sarpy, and Hall being the part of the largest 3.
Yeah, I don't remember, but Wayne, for some reason, sticks out in my mind, and they were like $49,000. It was some not huge population county.
And just to add more to it, Hall County is looking at some rather large increases across their elected official board for next year, for fiscal 2018. But that's something that is not yet, we're not quite there yet as far as our salaries go.
So the average number that we're taking on these in-state are the average of Lancaster, Sarpy, and Hall?
Correct.
Okay.
Any further questions on this presentation?
I think we also need to take into consideration if, for example, Lancaster, Sarpy, and Hall, the closest county to our size is less than half our size, and that's Lancaster. And that's very important when you talk about all the work that the elected officials in Douglas County do, as opposed to the elected officials in Lancaster, Sarpy, and Hall. Also, if I go back to the first page, it's a little bit confusing to me. When you go Register of Deeds and Assessor Appraiser, okay. Under Register of Deeds, it says Douglas as opposed to the average is 118.2, but you can't really count that because we don't have a Register of Deeds sole
He
average.
explained it, you weren't here. He said that when you started.
Okay, well, I didn't know that. So, anyway, so that, you know, if you combine those two together, then we aren't above average, we're below average.
Potentially, we could be right. I'd have to actually run the notice to give you an exact answer, but I wanted to show how the structures were different, but we still wanted to try to compare it to our
Sure.
structure as well.
Oh,
So-
we definitely need the figures to compare with, but those are 2 observations, specifically the different sizes of counties.
Any other questions?
This national array, how'd you happen to pick Johnson, Davidson, Sedgwick? I mean,
These are counties that we would use in union comparables.
Okay.
And so we felt that was the best place to start with these.
Mhm.
There may be other counties out there that are of similar size.
Right.
But we do look for counties that are of similar size, similar populations. So that's some of the criteria that we would use.
And are we using kind of a concentric circle, because they seem to be within a, like, certain area? Tennessee may be the farthest away.
500 miles.
Is it
Right.
concentric circle?
Is generally what we look for in a region. So your far bounds of that 500-mile radius is going to be Pulaski. It's going to be Little Rock. That's going to be far bounds.
Sure, what's the radius you were saying?
About 500 miles, just to look at it regionally.
I see.
You know, rather than, because if you get outside that circle, you're reaching toward the coasts.
Right.
And those coasts are,
Sure.
you know,
Right.
going to offset things.
Okay.
Don?
I was gonna tell you, I Googled the Polk County attorney. In July of 1st of 2015, the Polk County attorney salary was $184,700
Okay.
in 2015.
And we just weren't able to get
Sure.
anything newer than that, so that's why we didn't,
Yeah,
we wanted to.
but at least that even shows that it's more
Absolutely.
than
What was that again, Don?
184,700 and in 2015.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
Well, and some of these are comparables in different levels of government. So county attorney, U.S. attorney, roughly comparable. Public defender, federal public defender, roughly comparable. And I think you're gonna find those numbers are, like the Polk County attorney, substantially higher than the numbers that we're talking about.
And we used the best match that we could, best comparability between titles. And so they may not be an exact match. You know, some of the counties, the
Sure.
clerk may not handle.
Right.
The clerk may handle driver's licenses or something of
Yeah,
that nature.
right.
So we do our best to make sure that the titles are comparable.
Anything else? Is there any other information that the elected officials would like to see or talk about?
and sign the.
I just haven't got you, people haven't responded fully yet.
Okay.
So I just don't have all my information yet, but I guess one of the other things you gotta keep in mind is compression amongst our ranks, for me to be with regards to the captains and the chief deputy. Over the period of 4 years.
That's the same issue that I suffer from my office. If we have an assistant chief that makes more than the chief deputy, and then the compression gets 90% from me to her, then it's less than 90%, or more than 90%, it becomes an issue.
All right.
Just, I also talked to Tom Riley about this, because there was the question about similarity with regard to salaries. He said that's not an issue as far as he was concerned. He knows that he'll get treated right. I know I will too, so it's not something that he's, has a concern about as long as they're somewhat close to each other, so.
Anything else? What's our time, frame to have this on the agenda?
Well, we have 3 meetings in December, but we wanna do it,
Before the last one?
I would say, if you can have it on for the 5th, that's what you would wanna do.
Do you think you'd be ready? And then we always have one more week then, if something comes up that we can move it, or 2 weeks, but we don't wanna take it out to the last one.
Would rather not.
Don't have to do that. We have 2 to.
The last one, the 19th.
Does he know what?
If I could add one other thing that, and I've mentioned this to Mary Ann already, one time only, I would like to set the county commissioner's salary for 4 years rather than 2. The idea is, before John Friend files for office, he knows what the salary is for all 4 years. It's not your salary, it's the clerk of the district court salary. With county commissioners, we're only doing 2 years out, and so if you're elected, I mean, you get to vote on your own raise. The salary should be set 4 years out, and then every other year we should be setting 2 years' salary. So that when you file for office, you know what the salary is all 4 years. You're not voting on your own salary for years 3 and 4. That's what we're doing now. I'm not comfortable with that, and I think one time only we should push the county commissioner's salary out to 2 years further.
We need to check on the state statute on that.
I'm sure we do. I was kind of hoping there'd be a county, well, there is a county attorney here.
There is. I defer to Patrick and Diana. I don't know what the statute says, I haven't looked at it, so I don't know.
Well, I think the issue is you have terms that are not all up at the same time.
Sure,
So I
because they're
think-
staggered.
But we'd have to check. I think you can set it for 4 years, it's just that you'll have to do it every 2 years. So,
If we did it for 4 years, one time, and then every 2 years, we set 2 years' salary.
You-
That's
oh,
what
I
I
see
would,
what you're
that's
saying.
what, I mean, we set 2 years' salary right now. But we should be 2 years further out in doing it,
Yeah.
is my point.
yeah. Okay.
So we would
Got
just
it.
have to look to
Make
see
sure.
if that was within the law that's currently on the books to be able to do that. Patrick?
So does, Matt's gonna be putting the resolutions together, I presume.
Absolutely.
And do you know what numbers you're gonna bring?
Yeah, tell us.
After you tell me, and then I'll tell you what they are. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to put the resolution together, I just need some direction from the board, and it's what we'd like to see, I guess.
So right now, what we're looking at is the top line is basically where we sit right now. And we're setting these salaries for the next 2 years, correct?
Yes.
19 for the other elected officials,
No, 4
19,
years.
20, 21, 22.
Yeah.
Those
3
4 years,
years.
okay.
And then for the commissioners, it would be 19, 20. That's
4 years for elected and 2
4
years.
years for elected officials, 2 years for the commissioners, unless we do what Claire wants to do, which would be 4, 19, 20, 21, 22.
And we can find that out.
And I have wrote a lot, if you need the old resolutions.
That would be helpful, yeah.
Do you have them? Do you have them?
I'll have to look and see, I don't
Otherwise,
know
I
if
have
we
my
did that one.
spreadsheet.
Isn't the salary already set for 19?
For 18. Or
No,
18.
18.
Set for 18, but now we need to set for 19, 20, 21, 22.
So it changes in 9,
No, the
for
election.
the county, I meant county commissioners.
No, it changes in 18, you go up to 49,000 in 18.
Oh, is it, okay.
Am I correct that in today's meeting, you passed a 4% non-union salary increase, And had you previously set at 4% chief deputies? Okay, so both of those entities are at 4%.
Did we set the chief
I
deputy?
thought we
I
did.
thought that it was included in the resolution.
Oh,
Unless,
I think
elected official
there
had
was
something
one that
else.
might have been
It
three,
was.
but they were four.
Okay.
And so I guess that's the question for the commissioners, do we stay with those percentages, so that they stay again where everybody's kind of going up at the same, without that compression being an issue?
And just for everyone's information, typically those that are on the range that are getting the 4% are going to be management folks that are going to be probably your second or third level down from the elected official.
And it always have to be four because it's gonna compress.
And so then the question is it 4% for all 4 years?
Every year, yeah, for 4 years. But probably,
I mean,
if we don't, we get compression.
You know, and you're not talking about a lot of money necessarily, you're only talking about a handful of people, really. So I think if you do the 4% every year, then that protects you from what might happen in the future years from compression.
and it's in line again with what we're doing for the union and non-union. So if I don't hear otherwise, we'll create the resolution to reflect that. And we'll have it on for
Fine.
the 5th. And then, except for the commissioners, we're gonna check and see if we can do it the one time 4 years.
I'm gonna ask Commissioner Kavanaugh a question. Now, this morning at the meeting, you said, you know, we should be staying closer to the cost of living, the 2.5%, 3% at our board meeting.
Well, I don't know that I said that, PJ. What I said was I wanted some rational basis for doing what we were doing, and the HR people have made an argument that, you know, we're catching up here. But they're not doing this 4% beyond this year. I mean, and we specifically asked that. This is the end of that catch-up for the non-union employees, and then they're back to it. So, you know, going forward, a couple of things. If I'm hearing correctly, you want to do 4% for everybody on this page for 4 years, okay? We don't have to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, anything for the county commissioners this year, do we?
You
We have
do.
to set it for 19 and 20.
We do.
Because some of you are up for election again in 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if what you're saying is same for everybody, well, I guess that, you know, there's some uniformity to that. We just did it this morning for a whole group of over 200 of our non-union management employees. And we're doing, I don't know, there's an average, but it's got to be north of 3% in general for our collective bargaining units as well. So, you know, everybody's within kind of a range of a percentage or maybe even less countywide. And that's kind of, you know, what I think is high tide raises all boats. Either we ever give everybody kind of the same or we're playing favorites. And if I'm hearing right, this is giving everybody kind of the same. Is that right?
Well, close. I mean, we've done a lot of 3%, really, and I think that's kind
Sure.
of what you stated, and it was stated by Doug. the
Yeah.
Inflation rate and so on, and I know,
So what,
yeah. We did the chief deputies.
Yeah.
4%.
what I think that the difference between the two sets of data that we were looking at this morning was Doug's was, correct me if I'm wrong, CPI only, right?
Yep.
That's like, you know, one spectrum. This, what we ultimately did was based on a comparable array, which is more than, I mean, you don't ignore CPI, but you do what's going out there in the region, similar jobs in other jurisdictions, stuff that wasn't in Doug's at all. And what, if you include that as valid comparables, and we do all the time with our collective bargaining units, then you get a different number. And I think that's kind of the number that we passed on this morning. And if I'm understanding Mary Ann, that's kind of the number that we would pass on for this. Am I right, or what? Yeah, is that right?
That's what I'm saying, is that did the 4%, and I'm just throwing it out there, if everybody's comfortable with it, if you're not, then
No.
we can change it.
So just across the board, 4%.
Across the board, everybody, all the elected official salaries that we're setting today would get the 4% for the 4 years, except for the commissioners. We gotta check that.
Yeah, well,
I don't know, the elected officials weigh in here because it's your compensation package that we're talking
Like I
about.
say, I haven't gotten everything back yet, I just know that, off the top, I think 444 is gonna cause me some compression of at least one or 2 years. So if I could get something back to you by Wednesday of next week, and I'll send it to all the commissioners,
Yep, that'd be good.
fine.
and then I'll politic like hell from that day forward.
Good luck.
From my perspective, I'm satisfied with that for the position.
Counselor?
I'm fine.
Don,
Fine,
John?
I'm fine.
That's
John?
great. Appreciate it.
Claire?
I appreciate these guys saying they're fine, but then that's getting Don Klein a salary, not the county attorney. I think a couple of these are still just a touch low here, and it bothers me. I mean, it's at least 4, but I can see the case here being made for 5 or 6 on some of these, and I'm not talking about us anymore, I'm not doing that again, but on a couple of these, I'm not, and possibly that's what we'll find with the sheriff, that 4 may not be quite enough. The sheriff is no longer we're the highest paid of every elected office in the state, other than commissioners and the sheriff and possibly the county attorney. I mean, I think by and large, our elected officials are the highest paid in the state, and they should be. You know, we're twice the size of any other county. And anyhow, I think the 4 is gonna be close. There may be 1 or 2 of these, not us, that maybe should be a hair higher.
Well, we'll start it with the 4 until we get some further information, and then we'll go from there. Okay? All right. Anything else on that agenda item? Anything else under other business? The next, Human Resources Committee, it's been requested that we have a conversation about retiree insurance, and so we'll have that at our next, HR committee meeting.
When will the next one be?
I don't know yet.
Oh, okay. I just thought in case.
With the holidays coming, it might not be until the first of the year, so.
Mary Ann, I'm okay with the 4% as well.
Okay. All right. All right. Good.
All right.
We are.
Happy holidays, bro.